Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 64 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. On this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Jamie Gold, the 2006 World Series of Poker main event champion. Since his landmark win, still the biggest ever for a main event, Jamie has focused primarily on philanthropy and using his celebrity to help promote and fundraise for charitable causes, often with poker as the vehicle. He's also continued to be involved in a number of projects, which we'll hopefully hear some more about today, as well as what he's been up to during the pandemic times. Jamie, welcome to the CardsChat podcast. It's good to hear your voice again.
No, thank you, Robbie. This is such a pleasure. What a crazy couple of years it's been for the world, not just for me, but it's so nice to be talking to you now. You know, what a wonderful person that you are, and everything you've done, you know, to promote the world of poker. And it's always just such a pleasure anytime we can connect.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. And yes, in full disclosure, so everyone knows, Jamie, you and I have been in touch for, well over a year. This pandemic has been just crazy times, and you've gone through a lot, obviously. We've all gone through a lot, but just sort of trying to coordinate this interview and make it happen. So I just want to, publicly say I'm exceptionally thankful the stars have finally aligned, and you've kindly agreed to give up your time to be with me here today. And as much as I know about you, as much as the world knows about Jamie Gold, the main event champion, 15 years already, we don't necessarily know what Jamie's been up to over these last 2 years. He kind of been a little bit off the grid. I know, very unfortunately, very sadly, you had a bit of a health scare, but thankfully you're okay, you're well, you're alive, everything is good. What, to the extent, however you feel comfortable, can you share with us what the past year and a half, 2 years have been like for you?
Sure. It's been rough, but it's been rough for a lot of people, and we've lost friends and family, and so many people have gone through the toughest times in their life in the last couple of years. So I know that it's certainly not just me, but I personally had one of the first bouts with COVID just about 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago, December. So before anybody was really talking about it, I thought I had pneumonia, and they sent me away from the hospital a couple of times, but it turned out that I had blood clots covering my lungs, and stopped breathing twice. It was really not fun. Thought I was dead. Somehow I just got really lucky, and they did not get me on a ventilator, which would have killed me.
Oh,
Looking back on
oxygen.
it. Yeah, they wanted me on a ventilator, but there weren't any available at the time.
Wow.
And if they had put me on, they realized that it would have killed me. Back then, they were just kind of really gambling with people's lives. They had no choice. They just had to kind of, try whatever they could to save people. And I think they saved about 15% of the people, but certain people that had certain issues, like myself, would not have made it. But thankfully, I did some really radical kind of treatments, and got focused on my health solely, and stayed away from doing most other things. Certainly no podcasts or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm back to 100%, and I'm just so fortunate and thankful that I got through it and was able to then, share that with other people so that I could help them get through it. And it's been a crazy couple of years, but I'm back to full health, and I'm going to start playing poker again. And sadly, I wasn't able to fly. My doctors no one would clear me to fly yet. So it just wasn't worth the risk.
For the main
for
event,
me,
yeah, we'll definitely
for the main
talk,
event. For anything at the World Series this
right.
year, it just wasn't possible. It just wouldn't have made sense. But I am allowed to start, playing again, and like everyone else, or most other people, I'm vaccinated, and we can move on, hopefully, from from a lot of the restrictions that we had. So I'll
Right.
start traveling again, in the new year, and I'm excited for to get back to life.
I'm so happy to hear that, and we will definitely talk specifically about this past World Series. Towards the latter part of the show, and we ask some more poker
Sure.
questions. But wow, just knowing how God forbid, it was just very close, and like you said, to be back at 100%, it's almost like being reborn, a new chance. And I imagine also, like you said, certainly no podcast, but like there's a lot of I guess isolations, a lot of you're a people person. Everyone knows, Jamie Golden, love fun to interact with, and just fun to speak with, fun at the poker tables.
Oh, you
I
too.
imagine,
Thank you.
well, it's the truth. I imagine that not just on the physical side, but mentally, that must have been kind of difficult for you to not be as social as you had been, because you kind of had to focus on your health, and be isolated in that way. Is that right?
No, not really.
Hmm.
I didn't look at it. I never looked at it that way. I was just so thankful to be alive. And
Wow.
so and also just understanding, you like myself, we're empaths. And when I understood what was happening in the world, I just felt so bad for everyone who was going through this, and the lockdowns and the losses that people were having, and not past losses of life. Then people who made it through it had losses of income and losses of the ability to work, and just all of those things. So I just saw it as being hopeful for the world to come back and to recover from this really terrible kind of
Right.
thing that was happening. And so, no, I mean, I might have had a few moments where, wow, it would have been nice to be able to get out, but I was much more focused on the idea of getting healthy and getting back to life. And it wasn't, no, I really didn't think much about the social aspect of it. I'm equally happy not going out these days,
Yeah.
for whatever reason that is.
Right.
I'm really happy when I do, and I'm really happy when I'm not. I'm just really grateful
Good.
that I made it, and that my mom made it, and
Right.
a lot of our family made it. And so we did lose some people very close to us, and it was a terrible couple of years, just looking at it for what it is.
Right.
But here we are, and I'm very glad that we are doing this now.
Same here. And obviously, everything starts with gratitude, and just when you start your morning with that kind of gratitude, the perspective, then moving
Every day,
forward becomes possible. In a
every
very,
day,
yeah.
I'm grateful for. So I know you are too. It's
Yeah. Absolutely.
it's
Well,
it's a pretty wonderful life that we have, and we're all
in,
very lucky to still be here.
indeed. And perhaps that dovetails a little bit into my next question. I remember, I'm sure lots of our listeners, and people in the Cards Chat community remember that when we were kind of in the depths, and when there was no vaccine yet, when everything looked glum and grim, there was a wonderful gentleman, John Krasinski, who came out with this YouTube series called Some Good News, and it was beautiful.
Mhm.
I think there were 8 episodes of it, and every time it came out, it just focusing on despite all of the generally yeah, it was actual bad stuff that was going on, to still nonetheless point out the good things, the blessings, the happy things. It was just a wonderful thing, and I believe that you had some sort of involvement in that series, right?
I did. I was just feeling really helpless. And when the pandemic, after I saw that I was still alive.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I just got something stuck in my throat. I am not sick.
Okay.
I'm,
Thank
I'm
goodness. Thank
very,
goodness.
very healthy right now. So it's, anytime someone coughs or sneezes, people,
Right.
right, people react now.
It's so true, for sure.
So I was feeling helpless in a way that I didn't know what to do for the rest of the world. And I connected with a good friend who was working on this show and had asked me, would you come in and help us with sponsorship and celebrities and anything else that you might be able to bring to this? And I said, absolutely. And they said, well, look, we can't pay you. And I said, I understand. I'm not looking to be paid. I don't care if it's a TV series and whatever it is. I want to feel like I am doing something positive for the world, even in a small way. I mean, we raised a couple $100 million, and it all turned out to be a really large scale kind of thing, and maybe the most watched thing of all media during the pandemic. I think there were a couple billion downloads of the clips, not of the entire shows, but just of the clips. And I know it made people really happy, and it was pretty incredible what the group pulled off. I certainly don't take full credit for this. I mean, John and his wife and his family, I mean, it's really about them, and then the physical producers that were in his house. But I was glad that I was able to be a part of it and help. And we certainly did some pretty impactful things. And it made me just feel better that there was something that I could do to raise money and awareness and make people smile during the pandemic, because, as I said, I was feeling pretty helpless. I mean, what could I do? I was in the hospital for a good portion of that time, even while I was working, and people thought I was a little bit nuts, but I had the ability to, I couldn't speak very well. I was having a hard time breathing. And so most of what I did for the first week was just on my phone and, through email and text. But by the second show, I was back home and fully able to work with them. And yeah, it was just a pleasure. It was being able to feel productive during a time where a lot of people just felt helpless. What could we do? I also just felt really fortunate at that time. Like I made it, I was alive, and there were so many people that needed help, and I just had to do something.
Right. And like you said, in the beginning, they said we can't pay you, but it's not always about the money. I imagine those feelings that you experienced and that you carry with you till today mean a lot more than any paycheck would have meant.
Oh, certainly. And also, nobody took a paycheck, no matter what anyone believes.
Wow.
It's so funny how sometimes people think that, when you try to do something good for the world, there's always a few haters that will say, oh, they're just doing it for the money. Yeah, we were doing it for the money we were raising to be able to donate 100% of every dollar. Sure, for that money, but nobody put any money in their pocket until afterwards. And I wasn't a part of, who cashed in on it afterwards, but the people that did, because it was, a very large sale to another entity, which wanted to make it into a brand, which I'm really glad. Why shouldn't they do something with that afterwards when the world came back? But he got a lot of blowback for that, and unfairly. I mean, the guy is so incredibly generous and kind with his time. He didn't need to do any of that. And then it turned into something that went up for auction and sold for a ton of money, which, again, I wasn't involved in the financial sale of that, nor should I have been. It was, we made an agreement. And so it was, anyway, I'm just very proud of it. I thought it was a really positive thing. And anybody who's seen it knows that it was purely to make people happy, and for kids that couldn't have a graduation, put on a graduation, and got Billie Eilish and Chance the Rapper and the Jonas Brothers to perform for them. And it was every week just
and
something.
being in Fenway Park, I remember also.
Oh, yes, we did something great with AT&T and gave away. We gave free phone service, I think, to everyone who was considered a someone who was working for other people during the pandemic, and they weren't even that kind of stringent about it. They just anybody who basically claimed that, all right, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a practitioner, anybody who was helping in any way whatsoever, you're a public servant, they just gave free phone service.
Right.
They just paid everybody's bills.
That's a
And
beautiful thing.
so it was, yeah, it was really nice.
Right.
And,
And
and
like you
I'm really
said,
glad that we were able to do that.
for sure. And like you said, so it did sell eventually, and it's a big brand. But, thankfully, we are, of course, moving out of pandemic times, obviously, cautiously, carefully. But, I think the general consensus is, the worst of it, thankfully, thank God, is behind us, and we're moving forward. But that doesn't mean that the world can't continue to use some good news. So I do hope that that does continue some way, shape, or form.
I do too.
Yeah, I know myself, and I'm sure so many hundreds of millions of people out there, among them many of our CardsChat forum members. That just gave them a spark of hope and joy. And man, he's a good looking guy. What can we say? John Krasinski smiling to the camera. That's that just makes everyone smile. So that's a good
Well, I'll
thing.
tell you what it also made us realize was that you do not have to have a full TV studio, spend $10 million every week. It really opened up our eyes to the public's ability to enjoy something that was, call it, produced for a dollar, right? That it was something that had really low production value,
Yep.
but really high kind of inner value, right?
Resonance.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that kind of led me to one of the things that I'm doing now, which was to create a new streaming channel where you don't have to have, we didn't have to raise $1 billion. I didn't have to invest $100 million to pull something off that looks incredible, that people have really never seen before in that kind of genre. It's not really about poker, but we're going to certainly support the poker community and build out anything that we can. I love what they're doing at Poker Go. And so it's we're certainly not competing with them or anyone else, but we're very excited about that's one of the couple of things that I'm really focused on right now. And a germ of the idea kind of came from some good news experience that I realized that you don't have to spend $1 billion and build Netflix in order to have a successful venture like that.
That's really cool. And it's, I gotta say, it sounds very intriguing. I want to ask 1,000 questions about that. I won't do that just yet, but perhaps
yeah, we won't focus on that today, but but it's it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about.
Cool.
And so some good news, certainly had something to do with that.
Very cool. Well, perhaps we'll touch lightly upon it as a later question I ask about relevant to that. But I also know, I couldn't help but notice, over the last while, you have been exclaiming your pride in something else that you were involved with, something to do with lottery.com. Can you share anything about that with us?
Yes, I'd been involved with them for, I think, about 6 years, maybe.
Okay.
And they evolved into a place where they had the opportunity to go public. And it's very rare that anyone who does what I do. I invest in a lot of different companies, and I advise, and I'll sit on the board of a few of them. And it's always a pleasure when the people who put their life into something, which I had not put in my full time and energy to it. So again, I don't take the credit for the success of this. I just helped them whenever they needed it, and brought them a lot of value when I could. But certainly the people who created that and built it, which were Matt Clemenson and Tony DiMatteo and the whole team of people around them, which I was just happy to be a part of, had the opportunity to go public through a SPAC. If you know what that is, a special purpose vehicle. And it's, it was really exciting. it's currently the the stock took a big dip, but from people shorting it, which is, it's just part of the game
Right.
of Wall Street. But it did turn from TDAC into LTRY, and so that stock, I don't believe that I can ask people to go and buy it, but I am very happy that I own stock in that company,
Good for you,
and
sir.
there's a big future, and it's also just it's trading so low at the moment that it would seem to be something
Looking at.
worth looking at and
There
doing
you
your
go.
own research on, and deciding for yourself if it's something that you think is a good long-term or short-term investment.
That's
But
really
very
cool.
exciting when
That's really cool. And
people
I'm
that you really care about
I
get
gotta
to go
say,
public.
I'm really happy for you. That's wonderful when one of your bets pays off, and it's not just like you said, financial. I know you were clearly involved with them, and I love that you shout out to the creators. Give credit where due. That's pretty awesome, and again, it speaks to your character, Jamie. All
Oh,
right,
thanks.
it's what we do in poker. Sometimes you got to change gears, so let's turn a little bit more towards poker specifically. You were brought up in Paramus, New Jersey. Your mom was really into poker as well. I'm wondering if there was ever kind of like a family home game. Did you ever kind of stay up late at night and watch her play, or were cookies, matchsticks, and pretzels involved, or something like that?
Yeah, I've been playing my whole life. I grew up first in Manhattan
Okay.
with my mom and my grandparents, and my grandfather was a gin rummy master, and that's really how it all started. Since I was maybe 3 years old, I was really into cards, and I would sit on my grandfather's lap, and he would play every Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday.
Wow.
And it would be, all his weekends, really just his free time. That's the thing that he loved to do the most. And it was such a great education, and I'm sure that that's where a lot of my card sense kind of came from. And yes, my mom also taught me a lot, and we were very competitive as a family in a very friendly way, but competitive. And so we would play a lot of games and a lot of cards, and not always just for matchsticks.
Okay.
So we would not that I had a bankroll, but whatever I would be given, I was certainly happy to risk, because there was, as a child, there's no real risk with anything, and people, I'm sure, started out by letting me win, and
Right.
then that really bothered me. I really not did not like to be given, that kind of generosity, let's
Right.
say, from them. But it was not fun for me to win if I wasn't truly winning.
I like
And
that.
so, yeah, over the years, I moved out to New Jersey when my mom got remarried to my dad, and it's yeah, it was so much fun. We would play, through middle school and high school, and I have some really great pictures of my friends who would remind me that, do you remember taking all of our money during, in high school? And then I just want to give it back to everybody. But I was I took it a lot more seriously than my friends. I remember in summer camp as well that we would always play we had candy back then, right? You would go to the canteen, and you would have, and our parents would send us. We'd each have a trunk full of candy, and I would end up with everything by the end of the summer. But I also would then just share it with everybody, because it's what other way is there? And so my friends from summer camp would also remind me that about us playing poker, and that I took it a little more seriously than everyone else. And so I wouldn't say that I was better. I just cared more.
Right.
And so it was, yeah, it was an interesting life and always part of my life. And I love the game, and it was something that I had always wanted to get better at, but there was not a lot of opportunity. I'm sure you remember back when there were maybe 2 or 3 books.
Yeah.
If you're talking about, 30 years ago,
Sure.
maybe not even, maybe one. And so there wasn't much ability like they have now to learn every single thing there is to know about the game. And there was no internet, there were no videos that people had created about it.
Sure.
It was something that I had only heard about the World Series of Poker from watching the movie Rounders. I didn't
Huh.
know there was a World Series of Poker. And once I saw that, that movie and that idea of a World Series of Poker just kind of hooked me.
Yeah.
And from the moment I saw Rounders, I remember telling, one of my best friends who's now a business partner of mine and who I went to college with. I remember saying, I'm going to go, I'm going to train and go and win that thing.
Ah, that's
And
so
they,
cool.
just said, yeah, sure. Everyone thinks that. And that is true. Everyone does think that. But I'm a little more competitive than most people.
That's so
And
cool.
so it's, thankfully it happened on my first shot, and I didn't have to spend my life chasing
Right.
that. Not that there's anything bad about a life of, with a goal in
Mhm.
that way. I'm just so thankful, because it would have taken away from so many other things, because my focus would have been on that, maybe solely, who knows.
Right.
And I like to do, I love poker. I'll always be playing poker, but I also love doing a lot of other things in my life. And I never wanted poker to be the one and only focus that I had. It's just not for me. For some people, it makes them very happy, but I never had the ability, or just the kind of mind that could just go and play poker tournaments all year. It never satisfied me.
Sure. Well, but balance is so important. We always talk about balancing your ranges. So having a lot of other pursuits and interests is, a net good thing for most people. So I'm happy for you that it
Most
worked out
people,
that
and
way
then,
as
and
well.
for some people, it's great for them that they want to play 100, 200, 300 tournaments a year.
Right.
That's wonderful. And whatever makes them happy.
Mhm. Well,
But it just never did it for me.
right. Well, I know, like, as you said, you really started getting more into poker during those famed boom years. And to the best of my recollection, you ended up getting coached to play by Johnny Chan, who I believe, and, please correct me if I'm wrong, was one of your clients when you were a TV producer, right?
Well, in a way, I would say he inspired me the
Okay.
most, more than coaching, but he was certainly kind and generous enough to allow me to hang around and watch them play at the highest level, so that I could figure out what I was actually missing in my game. I always knew that there were things that I just did not even understand. When sometimes you just don't even know what you don't know,
Right.
right? So I knew I wasn't the best player. I just knew that I didn't know what I was missing.
Mhm.
So he certainly helped me in that way, by allowing me to be a part of that world.
Okay.
And in exchange, I had offered him to, to help him with book deals and TV deals and movie deals and things like that, while I was focusing. I gave myself 1 year to, I had really, trained and focused on the game for many years, but I gave myself 1 year where I was not working, and I
Okay.
was just focused. I kind of took a year off. My dad was sick.
Mm.
He had ALS, and it just, made sense for me and my family that I would just focus on something selfish, because all they ever saw was me taking care of artists, and as an agent and a manager, and I was working a little bit in production, but really much more of a representative of artists. And I was working nonstop, and I wasn't taking vacations. I wasn't taking time off. It was, I was getting burned out, and my dad and my mom, they saw that it was killing me. And so before he passed, it was really important to him to see that I would focus on something just for me for once. I was now 35 years old. It was just maybe 34. It was just time that I had to make a change in my life. And so I did it for myself and for them. But it was certainly the best thing that I had ever done up until that point, to try to, not focus so much on everyone else, but to focus on myself. And so poker was my favorite thing to do at that time. So I said I would give myself 1 year, and I would just truly get engrossed in the game and learn as much as I could and try to figure out a style that nobody had really used before, because I was never going to be able to be the best player in the world. What could I do that people would not be able to understand well enough? So kind of, a little bit of the Jedi mind trick and
Yeah.
some neurolinguistic programming. And
Uh-huh.
I would study a lot of the things that had nothing to do with the game of poker.
Right.
It was more about psychology, and they didn't show much of that on TV, which, is fine. They showed what they needed to show to make it look like anyone could win the World Series of Poker, which is great. And it was really good for the game. But if you saw what was really happening, it's I had to figure out a way to win within the rules
Right.
that wasn't just about the playing the best poker.
Right. And I think that's we call it speech play today. And I think that was
speech play. And look, I also got very, very lucky, and things went my way, and I didn't get unlucky when I needed to. I would put it in with the best of it and not getting unlucky.
right.
And also had a certain skill of, I kind of knew where I was, and I was able to read people's hands. And so a combination of luck and working really hard at it and creating a way of playing that people weren't used to. And, I was also just kind of in a zone. And, sometimes you just get yourself into a certain kind of place where you're almost seeing what the cards that everyone is playing, and you can kind of navigate your way through 9,000 people. So
For
it's
sure.
I don't know that it will happen again. I'm sure I'll try,
Uh-huh.
and I'll refocus on it again. But I'm really thankful that it happened on my first time going to the World Series of Poker, trying to win the World Series, trying to win the main event. It was my first main event.
Right.
And it really, I just got so lucky that everything kind of worked out that way. And, and other people were just so generous with me. Let's say like Chris Ferguson, Johnny Chan, and Doyle Brunson. And, I was asking everyone for any kind of knowledge that they could provide. And people would just kind of tell me that whatever it is that I was doing was working perfectly, and not to change anything. And they kind of gave me that extra confidence that there's nothing we could teach you right now that would help you do any better than you're doing.
Wow. That's
And
probably
so
very cool to hear, maybe perhaps surprising even.
it was because, and it wasn't them trying to avoid. I would speak to them, more than a few minutes a
Right.
day, and they wanted to be helpful. But they just felt like if they were going to get in the way of what I was already doing, which was, working as well as any kind of plan could have possibly worked, plus the cards going my way, you can't ask for a better situation than that. So
Cool.
yeah,
Well, I
it's
appreciate that you gave the context, because, like, there's no way, I could have known that before. I think a lot of people
no,
just didn't
nobody
realize
could.
that.
Nobody could. And look, there was a lot of press and a lot of things written that were not true at that time. And I just didn't have the time or the energy or the care to correct it,
Right.
because my dad was dying.
Mhm.
And so when he was almost in a coma, and I just didn't care. People were making up stories that I had someone backing me, and that I couldn't afford to play in the main event. And the only reason I played was because I was bought in. Yes, I did have a free buy-in, because Johnny Chan told Bodog that I was going to win the World Series of Poker before we started, and that I was connected to celebrities, which was true. And they had a celebrity poker team. And so they made me one of their quote celebrities, even though I was not famous. I
Right.
was just someone who represented famous people. And
Right.
so, but Johnny Chan said I had the best shot of winning the World Series of Poker of anyone that he knew. So they were trying to get Johnny Chan to be on the team. And he said, I have my own, at that time, he had something called Chan Poker.
Right.
And he said, if I were you, I would just offer Jamie that deal that you're offering me, because this guy's going to win the World Series of Poker.
Go figure.
I had been winning a lot. I think I won 11 out of 15 of these smaller tournaments at the Hustler and Bike before I had, we have these little weekly, like 300 to 500 people. They weren't keeping records back then,
Yeah.
but it was if they had, people would be pretty surprised that, they thought I kind of came out of nowhere. But I mean, I had a little bit of success, before I had won the World Series, playing against a lot of the best players in the world, Johnny Chan and Barry Greenstein and Chris Ferguson and all those guys, a lot of the old kind of school famous players who were a lot of the best in the world at that time.
Right.
The Professor and they were all playing in LA. Most of them were not in Vegas, right? LA was the poker capital of the world in 2005 and 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And by far the highest concentration of players. And I'm not discounting Europe and other places in the world. This is just what I knew of the United States. Right. I'm only talking about the United States because at that time I wasn't traveling to play poker. And so forgive my ignorance of what was going on outside the United States. I'm only talking about what was happening inside the United States. Because certainly a lot of the best players were not from here.
Right. Right.
But I also didn't have a chance to play with them because they weren't anywhere near us.
Exactly. Of course. Well, I mean, obviously, so you win the main event in 2006, and then all of a sudden, okay, well, this is the peak poker boom. Everyone knows the name Jamie Golden. Okay, we're going to have, says Maury Escandani, let's have poker after dark. Let's have high stakes poker. And, we got to have Jamie on. And I'm wondering, is this sort of like the, producer in you who sort of said, hey, I'm a character. This is going to make some great TV, that made you want to do that? Or did you kind of feel, obligated as, a poker ambassador, someone who gets that title along with the main event to sit in those games and make those appearances? Which one was it?
Not exactly either. It was more that I could afford it. Okay. And I wanted to, so I knew that if I lost, it was okay. I certainly didn't think that I was the best player coming into that. I knew that I was, playing with much more experienced and theoretically better players than myself.
Okay.
But I like to learn, and I like to have these experiences. And it was a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity that once I decided I was going to do it, then yes, I also felt like I had a little bit of a responsibility as a character. Maury and I had become friends before I went on the show, and I helped him with some of those people you saw in the early high stakes poker were just people in my home game from LA.
That's cool.
We were playing in a very large home game in LA, and some of those people you saw, like Bob Safai and people like that, Nick Cassavetes, and I had brought them in.
And Mike Baxter was one of them also?
Mike Baxter was from our game. And so I had asked Maury to come and sit in our game at home in LA. And I introduced him to a lot of these people and said, I'm happy to help you. These are really interesting characters.
Yeah.
And for the show, so I was just so happy that I could be helpful in some of those early shows. And so, of course, I wanted to play myself.
Right.
And what people don't, and what's so interesting is that what I get a lot is people didn't understand the same way that they thought that maybe I didn't pay someone after I won the World Series, which just wasn't the case. It's just so funny how it's all public record, but people make up stories and hear rumors and think, oh, you were trying to take advantage of somebody. It's the complete opposite.
Right.
But on high stakes poker, people thought I lost a lot of money. I actually broke even. I was down about, I think about 50 grand. I think I won maybe 350 in the first 10 shows, and then I lost about 400 in the second 10 shows, but you get paid very small amount of money. And when I say small, compared to the money we're risking,
Right.
you get paid maybe, I don't know what it was, 1,200 an hour or
Yep.
something, or
Yep.
maybe it was right, something like that. I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was, I ended up with at least 60 grand from, net from the
The
show.
salary of the show, right?
And then, right. And so you're fronting me that over, because I played a lot of shows. And what people don't, they kind of forget the shows that I won, but the shows that I lost were so famous,
Right.
right? That they were such exciting hands.
Yep.
And they forget that I also was set up to lose $170,000, that more on that hand against Sammy. And
Yep.
that saving that 170 is kind of like winning 170.
That's
so,
for sure. Perspective.
I mean, look,
for
Doyle
sure.
Brunson said to me, he said, there's no poker player in the world that should have ever not lost that money that you didn't lose.
Uh-huh.
Aces against kings against the
Yep.
guy who was the most aggressive on the button, who was stuck 7 million over the weekend. How could you possibly save $170,000 by not getting him to put you all in, which you would probably have had to call?
Right.
And so, and if he put me all in pre-flop, of course I'm calling.
Right.
And so it was my craziness and that speech play, like you called it, saved me 170 grand there. So yes, I was set up. The cards were set up so that I should have been down at least $170,000.
Right.
But I actually broke even. So if you can imagine the experience and what I learned from all of that, and breaking even during that time,
That's
what an
a win.
incredible, that's a huge win for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I planned on, the possibility for losing.
Right.
So
Right.
a break even, beautiful.
Well, one of the places where, kind of like everyone wins, and this is, you've obviously been so tremendously involved. You've helped raise millions and millions of dollars through charity poker tournaments, where you've appeared as a celebrity. You've been involved a little bit behind the scenes as well. I'm wondering, of course, there is that competitive nature, but it's a charity poker tournament. Are you still gunning to win those when you play? And beyond that, what else do you enjoy the most about charity poker tournaments?
No, I mean, I fully enjoy them. And I think I'm now doing number 366 and 367
Wow.
coming up this year. I had to take 2 years off,
Yeah.
but I really enjoy doing these. And for about 10 years, when I was pretty much just retired and, kind of maybe investing in some things, but in general, I wasn't working very much. I focused on doing about 3 a month, which was also not necessarily a healthy schedule. You should do maximum 1 every month. And I was doing 3 a month. And yeah, I like to get more involved than just appearing. I like to help them with everything from, I can bring the celebrities, I can bring the sponsors, I can bring the high net worth, donators. I can help you raise, $1 million to 10 million on each of them. And I'm very proud about the fact that I also donated 100% of the money that I was ever paid for. I would usually just not even take the payments, but a lot of people also thought, oh, you're just doing it because you're being paid for it. Now, I should have been paid for it. I should have kept the money. It's absolutely okay when people I saw people saying something negative about Phil Hellmuth, that, he was paid to do a charity event. You know how hard that he worked for that? And you know how many people are working for the charity, getting paid to do that? Whatever he chooses to do with that money, he earned it. And he helped them raise $10 million. So they paid him whatever they paid him.
Yep.
Good for him. And if he chooses to donate it, he could donate it to any charity. He doesn't have to. He already helped raise 10 million for that charity. Why
Right.
shouldn't he do whatever he wants to do with that money? It's so silly. And the people who usually are kind of, having things to say about this are people who are not donating anything themselves,
Yep.
who are not successful in their own life, who are just sitting on the internet and bashing other people. Like it's very funny how people react to these things. But getting back to it, no, I do not try to win these things. Very often, if I'm hosting, how could I possibly win, right? It really wouldn't look right but I do like to play them down to the end, and then I kind of step away. If I, at the final table, I'll play down to, the last four or something, and then I
I know.
dump my chips. And so it's I don't feel bad about it. It's not,
Legit.
it's
That's
not
fine.
collusion. I'm just giving it away. And
Sure.
so I can't remember the last time I've ever done an event where I didn't have really good friends also supporting that event. And so who do I want to win more, me or them?
Right.
And
Right.
so
That's
I
great.
want them winning. And so my heart is in the same way that when I go to the World Series of Poker now, I root for my friends more than myself. And
No,
I
that's a
love coaching people and helping people. And I'm a much better coach than I am a player, because I don't really make mistakes as a coach. And I'm a sponge for, trying to learn from, I've read every book that I could possibly read. And I try to take in as much information as possible. And I don't believe that I'm ever the best player in the world. I think that I'm just a really great coach, that I can help other people on their path to try to achieve their dreams in poker. And that makes me really happy.
that's really cool. And like anything in life, someone who's been to the mountaintop, however you made your way there, everyone's got their own path, but obviously you've got, beyond poker experience, life experience, so much to be able to impart, and that good card sense, since you're a little kid, sure, who the heck wouldn't say, like, yeah, I want to get coached by Jamie Gold. That makes a lot of sense. Why not? I like that.
It's fun. And I'm glad that you said that, because I mentor a lot of people, and
Oh, cool.
I try to give back as much as I can. And look, I've been so fortunate in my life to be successful at most things that I've spent my time on, and I've learned a lot. And I'm now 50, and I have a lot to give back. And so any way that I can help people that I have in my life that I care about, it's such a pleasure. I don't have a lot of time and a lot of bandwidth for this at the moment, but it's not like I wouldn't want to win another poker tournament. It'd be really fun if I did, but it wouldn't mean as much to me as helping somebody else be able
Beautiful.
to do that, right? And
That's a
so
beautiful
it's
thing.
just it's such a pleasure. I've just found new avenues for enjoyment in life that have nothing to do with my own success.
Huh. That's really cool. Well, I guess I kind of have to ask though. You mentioned the old home game, and you got your buddies who definitely enjoy poker. Again, I know it's been a pandemic, but generally speaking, would you say that you still occasionally dabble in the home game, cash game streets so often? But the second part is what I would really want to ask is, if so,
I do.
do you peel off those $100 bills to make the call like you did on high stakes poker, or is it just chips nowadays?
Oh, I don't remember ever, playing like that, or being silly like that, other than on high stakes poker.
That
That was
was
a
just such a
show,
great
right?
scene.
That was a performance, and I was just trying to be a character for them. And
Uh-huh.
as you got it, you knew what was happening. That's
Yeah.
not me. That's anyone who knows me knows that that's just not me. But it was fun. And yes, I certainly still play. And not much. I could only really play online uh, during the pandemic, and so now I'm getting back into being able to play live again, which I love. I would always rather play live than online, though I do also enjoy playing online. And I got to play with Phil Hellmuth and Mike Matasow, a lot of these kind of private games that I won't talk about who's winning and losing, but
Yep.
I'm very happy to say that I've been lucky enough to be invited to play in these games. And whether they like my action or just because we're friendly, it's always nice to have the choice of whether or not you want to play in some of the most fun games in the world because you can do it online. So, you just want to be careful about who you're playing with because online has its own challenges. But I'm so excited that it's getting legal again now throughout this country and other countries because the future of online poker is so exciting. And I certainly want to be a part of that in any way that it makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, I love playing online. There's a certain kind of energy to playing live. Maybe also when you had mentioned what I missed about being social, I really missed the live poker energy of playing because it is one of my favorite things to do. Certainly my favorite hobby, other than consuming mass amounts of content
Yeah.
in movies and TV shows. And that, I've always been doing that my whole life too. And
Sure.
so, between content and poker and, other artistic kind of endeavors, I miss that a lot. And so live poker is always going to have a special place for me. And
Get
I
that.
also just, I feel like I'm just a much better player
Mhm.
live. So I win a lot more
Right.
live and, online, I can donate a lot more.
Right.
So, and it's also fun. I mean, online, I'd be barely paying attention half the time. And so
Right.
it's, it's just, it's a great way to pass the time.
Right, I understand that. One of the questions we always ask, basically all of our interviewees, and this kind of makes sense. We're talking about just having a good time, enjoying yourself, being friendly. We call ourselves, the friendliest poker podcast in town, and we always ask our interviewees, who is the friendliest player? And if you don't want to single one individual out, you can, shout out a couple people who you've ever competed against at the poker tables.
Who is the friendliest? Wow, that is really tough. I mean, it's so hard to single. There's so many players that people only kind of know from watching them on television, and then also just so many players who nobody's ever heard of that are so incredibly friendly. But maybe the people who maybe people. Why don't you give me a couple examples of people who people think are not so friendly, and I'll let you know if that is actually true or not, because people
Goodness.
misunderstand very often. I think that's an easier question to answer
Okay.
because I've made, I don't know, maybe, 10 or 20,000 acquaintances or friends at the poker table
Right.
over the years. And it's really, I mean, look, I do have a small group of people that I'm much closer to than others, but it's so hard to single out when I have that many that I think are so incredibly friendly, and a lot of people who people wouldn't even know, right? A lot of the best poker players people don't know. They're not necessarily competitive. They're not trying to win, the poker masters,
Right.
which is great for certain people, but certain people don't care about competing in a tournament structure like
Right.
that. They're just the greatest cash game players that you've never heard of.
Right. I think that's a fair answer. It doesn't have to be a specific person or a leaderboard or anything like that. And one thing I like about that
The friendly
answer,
leaderboard.
right? The friendly
The who's
leaderboard.
friendliest leaderboard. That would be funny. Well, maybe I'd hope that I could make that. Then I'd hope that I'd be up there.
Well, this is episode number 64, and I can say with certainty you're in the top 64 friendly interview. Don't want to take away from our other wonderful interviewees. But one thing I do like about your answer, though, you can learn a lot about a person by the people with whom they surround themselves. And when you say you've got that close group of friends who you do truly enjoy playing, whether it's online, whether it's in person, that does certainly say something about you. And that's why I really like your answer there, Jamie. So that's a
I'm
good
glad
stuff.
you said that. One of the things that I've really learned and tried to pass on to other people in life is that you always surround yourself with people who are smarter than you And of course, if you can, people who are kinder, if there's even a level of that you can judge that, but or as kind as you are, but always try to make sure that you're never the smartest person in the room, because that's how you grow. And that's how, it's kind of a selfish thing in a way, but it's a really smart thing to be. Uh, and it's the way that you can grow and develop. And I'm just constantly trying to be, smarter and a better person, in any way that that's possible. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because I feel like people sometimes want to be the smartest person that they know. And that just never made any sense to me. There may have been moments in my younger life, but I certainly, as I got older, realized that, the smartest thing that you can do is to surround yourself with people who are smarter and more successful, and, and have something to teach you. And so I also just really enjoy, but people who are driven and, have things that they've accomplished that maybe I could never accomplish in my life. But it just makes life so much more interesting if you just make sure that you surround yourself with those kind of people. And I've been really lucky. I mean, my current business partners are so much smarter than I am, and so it's just such a pleasure to be around them. And I'm kind of in awe every day of the people that I surround myself with. And so it kind of brings you, up to that level of achievement when you make sure that you're not the smartest person in the room.
That's really cool. And dare I say that, folks, if there's, I don't know what's yet to come in this episode, but dare I say, if there's another, a 3-minute portion that you cut out and replay to yourselves, that's a really solid nugget of life advice there. And I love it. It's great. Thank you, Jamie. You've said in other interviews that your main focus right now is producing TV, film, animation, video games, mobile games, virtual reality, and augmented reality. Of course, you've got your philanthropic endeavors that you're involved in, you're investing. Someone in your position, at 50, you've made it, you've done well, you get to choose what it is that you want to do. And clearly you are just so incredibly busy, doing those things that you want to do. I'm wondering, how do you plan out your schedule and decide what you're going to be doing each day, each week, when you want to take a break, and how do you make those decisions?
Well, it's certainly thoroughly thought out. I'm not just winging it every day. And it's one of the things that we're launching. I'm on the board of directors of a company called Simwin Sports. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, maybe 5 years ago, when esports was kind of taking over the hearts and minds of young people, and
5 years already. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's been, but about 5 years ago is when we started getting into esports, and and it was on its way to where it is now, at this incredible level of play and mass adoption. So the next generation of that is called simulated sports. So when you see, we're going to launch this at this year's Super Bowl in LA. And when you see, it's all of the leagues surrounding simulated sports. So the difference, my partner, David Ortiz, my business partner who created all of this, used to run the Madden series, for EA, and he won, so many Game of the Year awards, and he developed, Wayne Gretzky 3D hockey when he was in college for Atari, if you remember back when there was something called Atari.
I remember Atari, yes.
So that's how he started, and he's always been kind of at the forefront and this legend in the video game business. And certainly what got me into it on the business side of things. And so when we bring this out to the world, it's going to blow people's minds how far we've come with technology. and that you almost can't tell the difference. Right now, it looks a little bit realistic, but video games, it's still obvious it's a video game. You're not going to be able to tell the difference between simulated sports at a certain point. We're just going to be showing you version 1, but wait till we show you version 5. And so it's for, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, boxing, every sport, every major sport, soccer. People are going to be blown away by all of this. And we have these legendary athletes that own teams, and people in the public are going to be able to own teams. People are going to be able to win teams that they can own. And then people will own we will drop them as NFTs, all the players. People will then own the players, which we then get to draft as team owners. And they go along a progression, as opposed to playing one video game and your player, is either good or bad in that game based on what he started at. This is a year-long and season-long and lifelong progression.
Wow.
So that I'll have a player that gets hurt and I'll have to draft another player, and we'll have free agency. And so kind of like the ultimate combination of real sports, fantasy sports,
right,
and esports, but everyone gets to interact and be involved in it. And you'll see it. We have a TV deal, so it'll be on,
wow,
at least in 150 million homes.
That's
when
incredible.
We come out.
My goodness.
It's exciting. It's exciting. And that's one of the things that I'm doing, that I've been doing for the last few years. And it's really exciting. So when you ask me how I plan my day, I make that and our new streaming channel the priority of, what I'm doing. And then right. I plan out, my whole day, my days are very well planned out, to the minute of what I'm going to be doing, in the way that I plan this out this time with you.
Yep.
I block out time. And so people who, it's funny, I do have a joke between some of my best friends that good luck ever trying to get me on the phone. It's not as if I'm avoiding it. There's no such thing. They call me and then they text me and say, I forgot who I'm trying to deal with here, that we have to make appointments
right.
to actually speak to you. And it's kind of sad, but true that right now, if you want to speak to me, yes, you have to make an appointment. It's not that I'm so important. I plan out my days so well,
right,
that I know exactly what I'm doing every day. And I do not have extra time available, unless something gets moved or canceled, which people, sometimes will feel so bad that they're canceling something or, rescheduling something with me. And I can't explain it enough what a beautiful thing it is that you just gave me a free 15 minutes in my life, or a free hour of my life, that it is a gift to me when somebody has to reschedule something. I never mind that at all.
Well, so, money is one thing, but the time is one thing you can't get back. I think along with attention,
you said that.
It's our most valuable commodity. So that much more so. I'm first two things there. One, I'm grateful for this time. And I have to ask you also, want to make sure we have enough time for the community questions. Approximately how much more time do you have? I just want to, take up.
I have us until 3:30, so I have another 22 minutes.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure we get through it then. Okay, great. So I'll ask you about maybe 2 or 3 more, and we'll get through as many of the community questions as we can, because a lot of people had questions for you, Jamie. Okay. This is something that I know, lots of people love the celebrity stories. I know you've been invited to participate in plenty of high stakes private games over the years. They're private. We won't dig deep. We won't name names or anything like that. But if there's perhaps something very memorable or funny that's happened at such a game that, you could share a story with us like that. If not, we can move on. But if there's something that sort of jumps out to you, we'd love to hear it.
I'm sorry that I didn't prepare, as as I know you like these talks to be spontaneous. Forgive me that I haven't really thought about that answer. I'm sure that there is a great story. I just, if there was anything that you heard, maybe I can kind of confirm or
there's one particular name that comes to mind. May he rest in peace, the wonderful, fantastic, charming Norm Macdonald. Did you ever get to play with
Oh
Norm?
my, oh, of course. I mean, he was a good friend and one of the kindest, most genius people that never really got his due. Like he should have had the David Letterman type of show, and he should have replaced one of those people when they, when they retired or what have you. I mean, it was just really, he deserves so much more in his career than he was given. But yes, I played with him a lot. I actually ended up coaching him
Oh, really?
for tournaments. Yeah, and we were having a lot of fun. It was just, he's just, what a pleasure. He made me laugh so hard, and he was just such an incredible mind. We were also planning on doing a couple of projects together. I was going to include him in our streaming channel. I mean, I just, this is kind of, really hitting me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I know
It's okay. No,
he
no,
was,
no. But I love remembering people
well,
that we've lost. And so, to answer your question, yes, I have played with Norm a lot. And uh, let's see, I could tell you without exactly saying, who won or lost or anything like that. I know he wouldn't mind me saying that. We could also remember another, so, such a dear friend of mine, Sam Simon, who was one of the creators of The Simpsons, and
sure.
it did Cheers and Taxi and the Drew Carey Show, and I think he won like 18 or 22 Emmys, and one of the most generous, incredible human beings that I had ever known, that we lost sadly. I think it's now 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. Mhm.
Sam hosted all of us at his home. He had a little private game, and that was one of the most fun things that you could ever imagine, because it was almost all comedians. So it would be, Drew Carey and Norm Macdonald and, like, the people from the Howard Stern show, which
Uh-huh.
Sam, was a part of for a while. And and I'm not sure who else would want to be named, and so
Okay,
I'll
that's
reserve
fair.
that.
That's
But
fine.
certainly Jennifer Tilly wouldn't mind. And what an incredible time we would have at, also one of the nicest, you know, palatial homes on the ocean
Uh-huh.
that you could ever imagine. After Sam, and all his billions of dollars, he had this incredible place, and so we would play there every once in a while. And Norm, I mean, he would just have us, in stitches. Same as Drew Carey. That it became so much more than the cards, right? It didn't really matter to me who won or lost. I don't think it mattered that much to anyone else. We weren't even necessarily playing for that much money. It was just some of, the funniest, most interesting times that you could have, which then it evolved into a game on television called Sam's Game,
Hmm.
which was like the Sam Simon home game,
Right.
in which I actually didn't end up playing on. I was traveling when they were shooting, because they shot it all within, I think, a week. And then
Okay.
so it looked like they were playing all year, but it was really shot within 1 week.
Right.
So that, yeah, I mean, I have so many great stories about Norm, but we just don't have enough time to get into
Sure.
all of that. So
Sure. Well, that's
it's
pretty cool, though. I appreciate you sharing that little window into. Well, I think what's nice about that as well is, yeah, we, the non-celebrities, we the fans, it's cool. We're kind of starstruck hearing about it, but what kind of warms my heart is that among yourselves, there's just sort of that camaraderie. You can let your hair down, be normal people, make each other laugh, and just enjoy life. Like you said, it's not about the money. At that point, it's just about the experience. I think it's a beautiful thing, and really cool to hear that little window. And of course, may he rest in peace, Norman and Sam. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing that, Jamie.
absolutely. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite people who does keep me laughing now all the time, uh, in a private poker game, would be Kevin Pollock.
Ooh,
If
okay.
Kevin,
Sure.
he's a brilliant mind and incredible artist, and actor, writer, director, producer, and comedian, and just it's he's certainly been doing that for a long time, and so I just feel fortunate that people like that exist, right? These incredible artists who are also the funniest people, who just make playing poker sometimes even that much more interesting.
Right.
And so if we
Beautiful.
can we can share some experiences like that, but I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to share anything personal
That's totally fine.
about those experiences. And so
Don't worry about it at
uh,
all. That's fine.
I'll keep that private,
Cool.
but yeah,
Um,
it's I'm glad you asked.
Cool. And I do want to get one more of my questions in, or while we still have the time before we get to the community questions. It's just, I always save the quote unquote, the biggie for the last one. You've said in the past that you don't, and I'll quote this. This is you. You don't value money like other people do, but rather you value people and people, relationships, and experiences. And obviously that is very in line with what you've said up until now on the show. Your big win, in 2006 will always be part of your legacy, no matter what. You're always going to be the champ, Jamie. But how and for what would you like to be remembered?
Huh. Good question. How and for what would I like to be remembered? I mean, I would hope that people would remember me for trying to be a positive force for the world, in as a force for good, and living my life with purpose, and giving back to as many people as I could, and just really being extra kind and generous to the people that I love and care about, and my family and friends and things like that, where and maybe that I helped other people's dreams come true. I think that one of the things that I've been really fortunate to be able to do is to make other people's dreams come true. And so it's rarely about myself. In anything that I do, I'm always thinking about other people first, and how I can be of service to them, and how I can be of value to anyone that I'm working with or spending my time with. And so I hope that that's how I'm remembered. Poker is certainly a part of my life, but it's an achievement of me winning the World Series of Poker. I know that it's impossible that I won't be remembered for that. It's the thing that I did that was the most famous, the thing that people would recognize. But I would hope that people would remember me for, the what I tried to do for the world and humanity, and that I call myself a citizen of the universe. And so it's that I feel like we are all connected, and that we are all part of something larger, and that it's rarely, if ever, about us, right? About us alone. That it's, the less that you focus on yourself, I think also the happier you will be in life. And so, what I do for other people sometimes also is just filling my own soul, because I'd always rather give gifts than receive gifts. And so a lot of times, being generous is also being kind to yourself, because it just makes me so happy to make other people happy.
It's just, you're pulling on my heartstrings. It's beautiful and incredibly touching. And I hope so too. I really hope that, that manifestation of what it is. How could it not be? It's just a wonderful human being, and gosh, the Jamie Gould that I know has certainly come
So
out.
are you.
It's wonderful. It's so thank
You
you.
know, you've always been someone who I admire, Robbie. The way that you have built your life and handled yourself, and you give back and are so kind to so many people. You just make people smile, and it's I'm so glad that we've met and that we've known each other, and I do follow what you do in the poker world, which is always in a positive way. It's just been such a pleasure, and I'm glad that you're with CardsChat now, because I'd always been a fan, of you and the brand.
Very
And I
cool.
think that you have such a great path ahead of you,
Oh, goodness.
and there's no limit to what you can accomplish all together. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you.
My goodness, that's wow, thank you. That's incredibly flattering, and I'm honored you say that, Jamie. Thank you. I appreciate that. Gosh, I want to just keep talking to you for another hour and a half, but I want to make sure we get in some questions from our listeners. They kindly
Sure.
submitted it. So in this segment of the show, we turn to everyone out there in the Cards Chat community to see what questions you guys wanted to ask our guests. And of course, we have a dedicated thread on the Cards Chat forums for this. So as we announce who our future guests will be, please be sure to send in your questions. And I'm really happy to see some new names here. We got, I'd say about 4 or 5 of them. So hopefully we'll try to get to them all. Edgarick, I hope I pronounced that right. Edgarick, thank you so much for sending this one in. Jamie, Edgarick wants to know, does your aggressive style of play from early in your career still work for you today?
Yes and no. I mean, it's still my style, but it doesn't always work, because people assume that's how I'm going to play, and so I do get caught a little bit more often than I would like, bluffing. Let's
Yeah.
say if we equate aggressive with kind of bluffing, but I also get paid off more than most players that I've ever known, because people just have a really hard time folding to me based on what they've seen on television. But let's also say that I am someone who's on a constant path of learning and education in life, and certainly in poker. And so I am definitely not the same player that people have seen, 13 years ago, or whenever it was that they were watching me on television. Even I think my last high stakes poker, or Poker After Dark, was right before I got sick with COVID. So I think it was about 2 years ago was my last Poker After Dark. I was playing in Vegas, and I tried to play much tighter and tried to, I didn't want to look really silly, and just constantly being so aggressive. There were also just more, some crazy aggressive, like Randall Emmett, people who are just constantly shoving in. And so that adjusts the way that you play. But yes, I'm still very often the most aggressive player in whatever games I'm playing in, because I enjoy to push the envelope. I enjoy that kind of style of play. And so I change gears all the time, but I'm also, I love action.
Right.
And so win or lose, I like to play the game in an aggressive way. And
Cool.
so I hope that answers the question, and I'll try to answer them a little bit quicker so that we get through all your questions.
Cool. That's good. Thank you. And that definitely does. And it kind of like dovetails into the next question from Scold Pada. Thank you very much, Scold Pada, for submitting this one, who asks, on high stakes poker, you said you thought you could become the best bluffer around, but not the best player. So Scold Pada wants to know, how's the progress going for your bluffing game?
Yeah, I'm not so sure what, that I wasn't just saying things to say them back then, when I was just trying to be a character on the show. And so they asked me, to kind of play up the whole, bluffing thing. And I also just was honestly saying, I don't think that I would ever put in the kind of time that it takes to be the best player. But I can, hopefully I could be the best player that I can ever be someday. But as a bluffer, I think I had the opportunity, but I didn't also put in enough time to try to, be the greatest bluffer that I could be. Still have so much more to learn. I maybe, it's also, I think a lot of it has to do with how often you use that muscle.
Right.
And so if I was playing every day and I was competing, and especially in, high stakes tournaments, constantly, at least every week, every month, I think that I have the ability to be a world-class bluffer, let's say, but I just haven't really put in that kind of time. And so it's probably not going as well as I would have planned it to at that time,
That's fair.
from high stakes poker. But I hopefully I still have a long life ahead of me,
Amen.
and I have plenty of time to still get back, into poker more. And so I would say that I have a lot more bluffing left in me, especially I'm going to go and play on high stakes poker and poker after dark. And I'm still going to compete in those shows
Awesome.
once I'm allowed to fly again, which will be next year.
Awesome. Awesome. Lovart, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for submitting this one. Lovart says, for sure, no one can tab you as a nit or a scared player or a boring person to watch, Jamie. You were always very entertaining. When you won the WSOP bracelet, you took risks in crucial pots that helped you build a massive stack and finally win the title. So in your opinion, Luvart wants to know, is that approach the best way to become a very good MTT player, or is a more conservative, quote unquote, Phil Hellmuth style approach better suited to MTTs?
Well, I mean, if you had to pick one or the other, I would certainly follow Phil Hellmuth style. I don't know that I would even call him that conservative. I think that people mistake him for being conservative because you don't see all of the aggression, and he's so good at playing without you understanding what he's doing, that he's certainly the greatest no limit hold'em tournament player that I've ever known.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's ever going to choose between me and Phil Hellmuth, I don't think there's much of a choice. Certainly follow Phil Hellmuth.
Okay.
There's no choice in that matter. But I do think that all players should learn all styles, so
Okay.
that one, you have that in your kind of, you know, in your bag of tricks, let's say,
Sure.
and you should always be changing gears and playing in different styles, but also learn everyone's style so that you'll see it when it's happening to you. A lot of what you want to learn in poker has nothing to do with how you play. You need to learn how everyone else plays. And that's why the game changes every year or two. And players are playing so differently now than they used to play, that if you just stay the same and play the same style, which people think Phil Hellmuth is just playing the same style as he always has, I disagree. I think he is always adjusting his game. He's just not necessarily learning from new players, because he doesn't have to learn from new players. He is so, dialed in and tuned into his own evolution, that he just has his own style and his own way of doing things, and it obviously works. He's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the GOAT. 16 going on, I don't know, 35 bracelets for this guy. He's gonna before he
He's
goes.
incredible. And that's not to take away from Danny Negreanu or Phil Ivey or any of it. They're also incredible in their own way.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of people who always are looking for who's the number one best poker player in the world. I don't know that you can ever say that.
Mhm.
First of all, it's subjective. Second of all, if it's in any one category, then you can say you're based on a certain type of tournament, who won the most tournaments. Sure. But overall, it's a very general and subjective thing. And so there's a lot of incredible players, and he deserves all the credit for everything that he's accomplished. And so do other players for what they've accomplished in different ways. Right. And so I'm a big fan still of so many other players. I think that there's so much to learn from them.
Right. We're all big Phil Hellmuth fans. He was episode number 4 here on the Cards Chat podcast. So, folks, if you want to learn more, hear more from the GOAT, you can listen to episode number 4. Jamie, do we have time for one last one, or should we wrap it up?
Yes, I sent them a message that I'm going to be a little late, and they're fine.
Okay, so we'll do one. Thank you. We'll do one last one from our good friend Acid Burn FX. Best name, best, most creative questions he always asks. So thank you very much for submitting this final question of the podcast today. I think it's appropriate to end off on this note. Jamie, what small gesture, Acid Burn FX wants to know, what small gesture from a stranger made a big impact on you?
Hold on one second. I apologize. I was just texting so that I can have a few extra minutes here.
No problem.
Sorry, can you ask me that again?
Sure. Acid Burn FX wants to know what small gesture from a stranger made a big impact on you.
What small gesture from a stranger? Is it about poker?
No, not necessarily. Just in life,
just
something
in
that
life.
you may have witnessed or seen.
In life, a small gesture from a stranger. My, there are so many, but I'll try to start early in my kind of, call it a wanting to be successful so young. When I was 16 and still in high school, I had the plan. I wanted to be a talent agent for artists, for actors and writers and directors, but I had no contacts. I had never met anyone in that business, and someone was very kind to me. And when I was visiting the college, the university that I ended up going to in New York, I met someone who was kind enough to introduce me to a famous talent agent in Manhattan, and that ended up to be my first internship. And I worked for free all my entire time in college, all my summers, Christmas break, spring break. I think I took maybe one spring break to have fun, but otherwise I gave all my time for free over 4 years, which then ended up allowing me, I had a job waiting for me the day I graduated, and how I became an agent, before I was 21. And so, which is not the most impressive thing, because being the least experienced agent in Hollywood, you're the youngest, but you're also the least experienced. Good luck trying to sign clients. So I had to work with just who I thought were the most talented people, who then ended up, becoming these incredible world-class artists. But very difficult to sign clients when you are when you're the least experienced.
For sure. For sure. Well, that's a pretty cool thing, and a beautiful note. Again, the positive things that just a nice gesture can do, what an amazing impact it could have. Folks, thank you very much to everyone who sent in questions for Jamie Gold, and of course, a friendly reminder to everyone out there in the Cards Chat community. We'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forums. Please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels if you liked the show. Jamie, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners?
No, I just really appreciate you having me, and always a pleasure, Robbie. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Amen. Very cool. Jamie, thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of the Cards Chat podcast. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful day.